code your first website. All right, we're getting into the gravy here. Now that we've gotten a little bit more comfortable with HTML as a language, we've looked at it from a high-level view, even a little bit of the syntax and the rubber meeting the road. We understand that it is a separation of just the content. We're going to look at how to actually do this on our computers. I use Atom. It's a free text editor made by GitHub. It's cross-platform. It's on Windows and Macs, and it looks the same. So a lot of the skills, even the shortcuts I use, are going to be very, very similar, if not the exact same. The tool isn't the thing that makes you great at what you create. The tool just needs to be there. That means that you could choose whatever text editor you'd like. I just highly recommend using one like Atom because you're trying to learn something or potentially trying to become aware of something that you're not comfortable with. This will take a lot of that uncomfortableness out of the picture because you'll be seeing me use this text editor over and over again. I'll show you how the text editor can empower you with boilerplate code. Typing shortcut commands to just expand into a bunch of other code so that you don't have to memorize it. At first, when instructing with the Iron Yard, I was very against code expanding and auto-completion at first because that's how I learned. But what I started to understand is it distracts, by not using them, it distracts you from the ability to focus on what's really important, and that's what I'm here for. Is to bring an awareness to things that I've found as an important, meaningful route to learning this new skill to help you get further. Rather than toiling over all of the different elements inside of HTML and memorizing them, you're gonna memorize them with repetition. You're gonna type them and see them a lot. What I find more important is being able to create that boilerplate HTML, recognize it, and then start to discern how to make a design. Like we're going to look at LinkedIn into HTML. That's a real skill set that I find super valuable, and it'll keep you your eyes on the prize, which is being able to look at a design and think and translate that to specific HTML elements. That's a mental model. That's a mental exercise that's something that a team that you're either working on or may work on will ask of you daily, is the ability to take these things that other people want, whether it's a design or an idea, and make it real. This is one of those steps. We're going to go through these backwards. We're going to look at the real-world design of LinkedIn, and then we're going to jump into looking at our first text editor and the boilerplate HTML. Here I've pasted over all of the things I drew in a previous video over LinkedIn and the newsfeed. If we were to focus on just this center part, we can start to see how HTML can help us code this together. What HTML is just the content and what we see. And for a newsfeed item, what we see starts in the top left and moves to the bottom right through the center. The first item up here was a little text, followed by the next line, much like you're reading a book, is an image, followed by some text, another image, followed by text, more text, an image, a link, and so forth. That is how we come up with what to write in our HTML. We need to start with some text. But what I'd love to point out is something that you might overlook, which is that we also have this container. This is the parent relationship. This is going to be the first tag we write, and then inside of it, we're going to indent and write the rest of these things. Think of it like the content inside of this just so happens to be more HTML, nested children elements. These are all words to keep in your head. Lots of interchangeable concepts. So here we are. We need to start off by creating a folder to manage this in. I'm going to go into help me understand and make a directory called design. I'm going to change directory into it. And now I'm going to touch index.html. I'm going to switch over to Atom quickly, which is my text editor of choice. And I'm going to go up in the top left, and I'm going to choose a command called install shell commands. It'll give me some feedback, which means I can now, through terminal, use the command atom to launch Atom, which is going to help me with my workflow. So inside of Atom, I'm going to type ATOM and dot, which dot, as we've covered before, represents the folder we're currently in, which means we're going to open Atom in the folder we're currently in. So now on my left, you can see the word design and then index.html. First, we're going to double click on index, and then we have index open. We could tell by having this little tab up in the top. And then we can close this tree view, which is showing us all the files and folders, by clicking on this arrow. Now that we're inside of the index.html, we can type HTML, and then we can either click on this dropdown or press return. What this will do is auto-expand the boilerplate code to begin an HTML page. As you can see, it auto puts in the indentation needed for consistency, that level of professionalism that organizes your code and helps other developers or designers to look at your code and know the child-parent relationship. What you can see from this is that HTML is the first parent element for everything else, such as the head and the body. We can go inside of the title tag and type LinkedIn newsfeed component. Title tags, or what denote what shows up inside of the tab, what shows up in the top of Google Chrome or any other web browser you use, or if you save a bookmark. And if I hold Command and press question mark, I'll create the syntax for comments in HTML. These are things that won't show up inside of the web browser when somebody is viewing your code. They're for us, future us, or other developers, so we can explain what's going on here. This is where we put our content inside of the body. And I even tabbed in the comment to make sure that anyone looking at this code, or someone looking at this code, will know that this comment has to do with things inside of the body. We would write the line of code comment before the code that we write. I'm going to look at the design, or the markup that I had created for this design, and that's the first big green box, the container. One type of element that we could contain this with is an article element. It does open and close. Some elements don't open and close, as you see up here with the meta tag. Article does open and close because it will have content. When I add content to it, I'm going to press return a few times to get it on its own line, and then I'm going to tab inside of the article element. I'll look back at my design, and the first thing in the top left is text. It was the person that I knew on LinkedIn had liked this article that somebody had shared. For text like this, I would maybe opt for a link. The A tag is a link. If I type A and tab, it'll autocomplete this for me. I'm not going to return this one because it's a simpler element that's only going to have text inside of it, much like a title up here. I'm not going to create a new line because it's simple text content. I am, however, going to return 2 times so that I can write text with an empty space between them. I'm going to write, person's name liked this article. This href, it generated with a pound. I'm going to put a real link in here. And in order to complete the rest of this design, I'll reference what's inside of here and create the code for it to demo off a self-closing tag, which is the image. If I type img and tab, it will auto-expand and add the attributes that are necessary for this element or this tag. You can tell I'm using the word element. I use the word element to be very specific that it's something you see on the page. I wouldn't call the title or meta elements because you don't see them on the page, but I would call anything inside of the body or the body itself an element because, again, you see it. It has content in the page. The source, or src, this has 2 required attributes, src and alt. The src is the source of the image. It's where it lives on the web. The alt attribute is the alternative or the text representation of what the image is. It's what's read by screen readers. So low vision or no vision users that see this website while the image is loading, or if the image isn't found, can read the text and understand what it is. I'm going to complete the src with just a generic link to image. You could Google for a link, right click and copy the link, paste it there. And the alt is a coffee cup sitting on a table. So if I were to find the image, it would need to be a coffee cup so that everyone would have the same experience in knowing what this was.